This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Well, we wrap a big week here on Real Talk with Alberta's Premier, exclusively in one-on-one. In just a moment, Danielle Smith will join us. It's been a busy week, to say the very least, and obviously a very troubling week for anybody that's been watching the news cycle. You know, regardless of your politics, regardless of your favorite podcast, you know that one of the most prominent, popular, and polarizing conservative voices in the world, and most certainly in the United States, Charlie Kirk, murdered in cold blood, assassinated at a speaking event at Utah Valley University just a short time ago. The suspect in that Kirk assassination, as we speak to you on this Friday, the 12th of September, has been captured. The American President Donald Trump confirming that. We'll have more on that later in this episode. But this, of course, represents a significant breakthrough in the investigation into that targeted killing that has obviously raised fresh alarms about political violence in the United States and has prompted conversations, including on this show, about the tone and the temperature of political discourse around the world, including right here in Canada. We're going to talk to Premier Smith about that. She's also fresh off meeting with Canada's Prime Minister, Mark Carney, just a very short time after he sat down with us, that episode on Real Talk on the 10th of September, and the optimism that we're picking up on, the optimism that we're seeing from Alberta's Premier is, well, quite frankly, taking some people aback. It would appear as though things are going exactly how most people would like to see politics work. That is collaboration, that is cooperation between different levels of government. Now, of course, the Prime Minister announcing his first list of major projects, and on that list, a glaring absence for anyone that was hoping to see a promise of new pipelines. We're going to ask Premier Smith about that. But we'll lead with the story, of course, that has dominated the headlines globally over the past couple of days as we welcome Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith back to the show. Thank you, Premier, for making time for us. As mentioned, of course, the entire world, I think, shocked, to say the very least, with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. You were one of the first political leaders in Canada to post about it. Where's your head at?
Well, it's such a horrible, awful tragedy. I think any one of us who's in the ideas making business and the debating business and the political business has to wonder how we got to a point where somebody is in danger for trying to go on campus and get kids talking about ideas and sharing different views, and he gets killed for it. I think this is why I've always been very, very concerned about the loss of the mainstream media square as more and more. I mean, I respect the work that many podcasters do in trying to expose their audiences to a diversity of views. I think that's what the mainstream media always did. But there are podcasters who just lock in on their particular perspective with their particular side and the alternative. And that just leads to polarization. I think the only way that you can develop a sense of comfort about your own place in the world, your own worldviews, is by having them tested, by hearing what other people think. And you don't just go and kill somebody because you don't like the way they look at the world. So there's a lot of work we need to do. If I think everybody is very, very concerned that the safety of those who do express their ideas is going to be at risk across the board if you see these kinds of incidents happen. And so we've got to do some work with the kids to let them know it's okay to disagree. We're going to do the work with students, let them know it's okay to disagree, and try to restore that healthy debate in the public square again.
How does that land in Alberta? Like when you talk about, let the kids know, and by the way, I agree with you. We had this conversation, Johnny and I did yesterday, about the role that universities should play, for example, in, as a place for discourse. And there have been many, many examples over the past number of years. I can think of one, a prominent one in Chicago, where universities essentially served notice that certain types of debates would not be welcome, or certain guests would not be welcome on campus. As a legislator, as the leader of a government, does an incident like this change perhaps, or maybe even just advance maybe some of the initiatives you've been considering, some of the policies you might implement, maybe even things that may hinge on funding for post-secondary institutions?
Well, look at what we just went through. I mean, there was a Christian rock singer, Sean Fucht. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. Everybody, it's Feucht. But we were under a lot of pressure by people who didn't want him to be able to have his concert on the legislature grounds. So I hope that what happens is those people who wanted us to cancel his permit are doing a little self-reflection. It turned out to be a very peaceful event. I think there were 5,000 people who were there. There were a handful of protesters, which was fine. Everything stayed under control. And you can make your views known without it getting violent and without people being at risk. And that's, I think, what we try to do as a government is we try to live the values that we think should be permeating through our various institutions. I think our universities have done a good job. I know that other universities, when there was particularly fraught protests happening at universities across North America around the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, they were shutting universities down and making students feel unsafe. But our two universities decided no trespassing. So they wanted to make sure the campus was safe for students and no overnight camping. And so, as I understand it, the protesters came back day after day, were able to make their views known, but the students on campus were able to feel safe. So there is a way to be able to do both. And I'm just encouraged that what I'm seeing in the institutions that they really are trying to make those spaces safer for people of all views. And that's how it should be. That being said, I mean, there is a limit on speech, as we know, but they're criminal code limits. If you're going to incite hatred against somebody and put them, an identifiable group, at risk, that we have criminal code laws so that it doesn't go too far. But most of what I see in the public square falls well short of that. And so I think that we have to kind of recalibrate that just because your feelings are hurt by what somebody says, or just because you disagree with them, it doesn't mean that you cancel them or ban them or try to get them fired from their job. We have to have a much greater tolerance for discussion, because free speech is the foundation of democratic countries. It's being able to share controversial views, being able to share different views is absolutely foundational to how democracy works.
You've obviously got a big platform. When you speak, Canadian Conservatives listen. You're not the first Alberta Premier to war with Ottawa, or certainly to find momentum in your messaging. When you take Ottawa on, oftentimes there's loaded language. Your base gets fired up. You know how it works. And you're certainly not the only Premier that politics like that. It's all part of the game, I suppose. But does an incident like this, like I'll say to you, I self-reflect after an incident like this. I've felt over the years that some of the logs that I've thrown onto the fire, I would take back. I would rephrase some of the things I've said. I've tried to open my mind and seek to understand a little bit more over the years. Does an incident like this change how you feel about polarization in politics or the political temperature right now? Can you see it changing even the way that you communicate as Premier of Alberta?
I always, I make a joke sometimes that every person I meet, I think of as a current UCP voter or a future UCP voter. And so it gets me into a mindset of trying to find what's the one thing we can agree on. I tried to do that on the air as well, because I, like you, interviewed a diversity of voices, and sometimes not people who I would expect to disagree with on most things. But if you can find one thing to agree with the person on, it just will bring the temperature down in a discussion, and then you can build on that. So that has always been my approach. Certainly my approach that I tried to take with Justin Trudeau, my very first conversation with him, was let's see if there's ways that we can find a pathway to get to carbon neutrality by 2050. I spent 3 years banging my head against the wall with no success, but I started my conversation with Mark Carney exactly the same way, saying, where can we find common interest? And it's turning into quite a different conversation. So it takes two people, I guess, is the point. I always do try to find that common ground, and I hope that others who might be on the other side might have different viewpoints on me realize that there is far more areas where we agree than disagree.
Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith, our guest in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. Speaking of your conversations with the current Prime Minister, with Mark Carney, you appear to be quite optimistic. After your meeting this week, you've said that you found unprecedented common ground. You've said that you feel like Albertans are finally being heard. People aren't used to hearing an Alberta Premier talk like that, about a Liberal federal government for sure. What's going on?
We had a really long conversation where we're trying to go through what we've called the grand bargain. I know he's kind of talked about that too. He calls it, I think, Pathways Plus. But what we're trying to find is a pathway where we can get rid of the 9 bad laws that are impacting our investment climate. either replace them, repeal them, or substantially revise them, as well as support the Pathways Project, because that'll make us a leader in carbon capture technology, and as well as get a bitumen pipeline. You need money to pay for everything. You can't just have cost. You also have to have new revenue. And so I would say that on that package of proposals that we're looking at, we're finding a lot of common ground. A few things that we still have to come to terms on and find a path forward on. But I'm looking forward to his next tranche of major projects announcements. He wants to make another announcement by Grey Cup on November the 16th. And I would hope that we would be able to have a joint announcement by then.
Yeah, okay. So no new pipeline on that first list that was announced in Edmonton, just hours before you and I are talking. But you don't seem particularly concerned, which leads me to believe that you may have intel when you're talking about the possibility of a joint announcement by Grey Cup. That's not that far away. Do you have reason to believe that a new pipeline will be built in Canada?
I'm very hopeful. I know that there's a lot of demand. I think this is one of the things that we found with the Trans Mountain Pipeline is that everyone was expecting that was going to feed just the American markets down the West Coast. And as it turns out, more than half of it is going to Asia. 3 Korean refineries in particular like it so much, they've pledged to buy 1 million barrels a month, and they want more. We also now with LNG Canada in operation. Remember, that was a consortium that included a Chinese company, a Malaysian company, a Japanese company, and a Korean company, as well as Shell. And they all wish that they'd bought double the amount of share, because they're also receiving first shipments. And I think that's why LNG Canada 2 was accelerated, and we'll see a lot more of that as well. So those are the kind of things that we're beginning to understand, that we have been so focused on the American market for so long. Everything that we have done has been geared towards feeding that market. And now we've seen real tangible evidence that there is a whole new world out there with the Asian markets. And then on the other side of the country, you've got Bob Canoe, who I think is showing great leadership on advancing projects. He had a gold mine that was the first gold mine approved in 15 years. He's talking about building out Churchill, and I know that the Prime Minister is very keen on that. And that matters to us too, because if we're able to get an economic corridor from, call it somewhere around Prince Rupert to Churchill, now you can also build pipelines and LNG platforms in Hudson Bay, get some icebreakers, and now you're on your way to Europe, and you're on your way to feeding the East Coast refineries as well. And that matters. Poland representatives have recently said, yeah, we buy Canadian gas, but it comes via the U.S. Gulf Coast. So we're selling it for less than $1, and they're buying it for $15. How about we sell it directly? And that would benefit all of us. So I think that there is some real demonstration that this prime minister understands, because he's got a big budget deficit he's facing. He's got a lot of aspirations on some of the social spending he wants to do. You simply can't do that by printing money. It causes inflation. It harms people's cost of living. The only way to do that is you've got to create more wealth and create more jobs. And the way you do that is you build more things. So I'm seeing a real difference from this prime minister to the previous one.
You referred to Ottawa's plans around gun reform at a recent Alberta Next panel as a confiscation scheme, saying that Alberta essentially will refuse to cooperate, including RCMP officers. You talked about jurisdiction as well in that address. Here's what the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, had to say about that right here on Real Talk on September 10th.
We're not confiscating guns. People aren't going around confiscating guns. That is anyone who says that is a mischaracterization. What it is an opportunity for Canadians to return guns for compensation. And let's be clear. We are not talking about hunting rifles. We're not talking or sports shooting or anything like that. We're talking about assault rifles. We are talking about weapons of serious weapons. Let's put it that way.
Can you see a world where you and the Prime Minister will wind up seeing eye to eye on this?
Well, I can tell you the way I look at it. The way I look at it is that people want their law enforcement to focus on bad guys. And we've got a lot of bad guys out there. We've got organized crime, fentanyl labs, we've got gangs, we've got human traffickers. We don't want police resources going and knocking on people's doors because they didn't voluntarily decide to give up their guns for payment, as the Prime Minister puts it. It's just not our priority. And so what I have observed in the way our country works, and I've seen a legal paper on this as well, is that yes, the federal government has jurisdiction over criminal code, but the provinces have the power over policing and administration of justice. And that means we get to decide our policing priorities. And quite frankly, our policing priorities are not to be targeting those who purchase their guns legally. So we've seen sort of non-enforcement of laws in the past. It's not uncommon. Cannabis laws went for a very long time across the country not being enforced until it was ultimately legalized. In British Columbia, they went with non-enforcement of all hard drugs. They've since reversed course on that. But this is the power the provinces have, and I can tell you there's no appetite in my government to assist in targeting legal gun owners.
You can't be happy with the international attention around that move to remove a bunch of graphic material out of Alberta's school libraries. Are you surprised at how this has blown up?
Well, I think that there was some precision we maybe should have put into the initial ministerial order. We thought by demonstrating the kind of materials that we wanted removed from the classroom that we would have the school board say, yes, you're right. We don't want elementary school kids to see those either. So we were a little bit surprised when Edmonton Public decided to take their classroom list, run it through AI, and then every dirty passage and every dirty book they determined had to be taken off the shelf. That was certainly their decision, not our decision. So we had to make it super clear what it is that we were aiming to do. I think that as kids become mature and adult and understand human sexuality, of course they can be exposed to more challenging materials. But what we were really concerned about is that there were graphic images that there's no other way to describe it, that were pornographic, that were available in K-12 libraries, and so they were available to young children. And we want those off the shelves. So I think we've made it super clear what it is that we're after. Don't show graphic images to children, and leave the classics alone. And so I think the spirit of what we intended is finally being implemented. It took a little while for us to get there, but I'm pleased that the other school boards seem to understand what we're trying to do.
Do you think that the way that it was framed, I mean, we were talking about like all the international, BBC and The Guardian and the New York Times, I mean, it's been everywhere. The way that it was framed, do you think that Alberta's reputation took a hit?
Perhaps, but again, I also heard that there were a lot of kids or a lot of people going out and buying those books. So maybe young people are going to read it for the dirty bits, and they'll take the philosophy along the way. And maybe we'll actually have kids getting engaged by reading good and challenging materials again, because that was never the intention. If we have more kids reading Atlas Shrugged, I'll count that as a victory.
I know that thousands of Alberta families are probably bracing for what everybody expects to be a teacher's strike. They've served strike notice, takes effect October 6th. I know that there's an offer on the table. You've commented on it, 12% over 4 years, 3% in the first year. Is there a world where you think this situation can be resolved? Are you optimistic that you can keep Alberta teachers off the picket line like 3 weeks into the school year?
Well, I think it's very much up to the leadership of the ATA. I think that the leadership may have overpromised to their membership, and as our very fair offer was revealed, I don't know that they have really spoken with their membership about what it means. I mean, we have had over 50% of our collective bargaining that have settled at the rates that we've been offering, 3% per year for the next 4 years. That's 12%. And I'm just asking everybody to look at their own paychecks and see if their employers are giving them 12% over 4 years, because we think it's very fair. It's very much in keeping with what we're seeing across the country. And here's the question. I mean, if we try to have a wage settlement much beyond that, then it cuts into budgets for other things. We have $1 billion that we want to spend on getting more education assistance in the classroom. We pledged $750 million more to get more teachers in the classroom, 1,000 teachers per year for the next 3 years. So if we end up cutting the number of teachers and the number of EAs, then we're not going to deal with the foundational issues that we're hearing that teachers want us to address, which is classroom conditions. They want smaller classes, and they want more hands in the classroom to be able to help them deal with complex needs. So we feel like we've got a solution on the table, and we're very hopeful that the ATA leadership is going to help convey that and also help us in being able to bring the teachers to understand that this is a balance. We're also out of money. I mean, we need to balance our budget. We need $74 a barrel of oil to balance our budget. And that's why we've had a few good years, is that it's averaged at or above that. But it's now averaging 60. And we're hearing that Donald Trump wants to drive it even lower into the 50s. So under the current circumstances, we've got a $6.5 billion deficit. There just isn't money to pay for higher and higher wages that are outside, quite frankly, what we're seeing in the private sector or other jurisdictions. But yes, We have to hire more teachers. We have to hire more EAs. So I'm hoping some progress is made at the bargaining table on that.
Premier, you're up against the clock, and so we'll leave a question about public auto insurance in Alberta on the table until the next time we speak. But in closing, I couldn't help but notice you chuckle. We call it our Real Talk pre-roll as our live stream goes up around 8:25 Mountain Time every weekday. We play highlights from previous shows, and that included a comment from Adam Corso, who's the owner of Analog Brewing right here in Edmonton. And he was talking about how, while Alberta has a pretty friendly landscape for brewers across the country and internationally to sell their products in Alberta, Ontario, he says, is very protectionist. He says it's virtually impossible for Alberta craft brewers to get into Ontario. There was a lot of talk, most recently around the federal election, about eliminating these interprovincial trade barriers. We could give you 1,000 different industry examples. You could give us 1,000 more. But what resonated with you as you were hearing Adam talk, and has there been any progress on better trade flow between Canada's provinces?
Well, I'm glad you recognized that. We actually stock, I think, 36,000 different labels on our shelves in Alberta. And that's because it really is driven by what the retailers want. And when you have retailers who find a great product, then it's up to them to bring it in, and we facilitate that. And it's up to them to be able to find a base of customers for that. That's how the free enterprise should work. Where I think we'll very likely land on creating a more open market across the country is direct to home delivery. So that we've already done that with wine. We created sort of a virtual warehouse, is what we're calling it, between us and British Columbia, and other provinces have expressed an interest in that. Now, I don't know how many people order a case of bourbon or a case of rye whiskey, but it's entirely possible that might be one of the solutions. I haven't seen how that applies to how restaurants order their product, but that may be the next step, is to ensure that, because we may very well be able to do a workaround on the protectionist agencies that all of the other provinces run, and just make sure that we're dealing getting our incredible distillers and brewers, get them connected with their patrons all over the country. That's what we're working towards.
Alberta Premier Danielle Smith in our feature interview today, presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Real Talkers want to get to what you have to say about this. I know we covered a lot of ground there. The public auto insurance, by the way, that's a big story. But the reason when we get to the point where we're to time in the interview, and why laid that one kind of on the cutting room floor, there's still some time. The Alberta government looking at auto insurance reforms over the next year or so. And I know that this has been a huge issue for Alberta consumers, and not just that, for employers, for everybody that's paying for auto insurance. Not everybody, but a lot of people have seen their rates skyrocket. Like, we've heard from people every time we bring it up on the show. Somebody will write in and tell us that their rates like doubled, or their 17-year-old teenage son is paying $6,500 a year for a 15-year-old car, stuff like that. What I think is particularly interesting about it, and what we'll get into with Premier next time we talk, is that she's very much a free market wired person. And so to introduce public auto insurance in Alberta would be a big step, and obviously would be very unpopular with, guess who? The big insurers. But we're hearing from a lot of insurers in different jurisdictions, might be apples and oranges, but for example, due to climate change, natural disasters, certain high-profile insurers, some of America's biggest companies, will not offer residential insurance in the state of California, as an example, or in certain jurisdictions in California. And we're hearing from some people that they're seeing similar developments with auto insurance in the province of Alberta. Some insurers are saying we simply can't do it. So I think the government's recognizing this. It has to do, I think, a lot with some of the payouts for injury claims following accidents. And so the government, I'm sure, is considering some sort of a cap there. Probably good if you're worried about the insurance company's bottom line. Probably not great if you're badly injured in a car accident and you don't qualify for a different level of sort of compensation there. But it'll be curious to see. Saskatchewan, a very conservative province, has had public auto insurance, and nobody seems to mind there.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I've said this before. I just lost the summer before this with the wildfires. My insurer took away the home insurance. Said, "Hey, we're not going to do it after X date." I was like, "Oh." And then 6 months later, hey, we're also pulling out of auto insurance in Alberta. So I'm actually in the next 2 weeks going to be switching over to another provider. So I'm right in this boat where I'm like trying to navigate who's got the best deals and whatever. And I'm someone who also, I told you, my rate went up about a year and a half ago as well, through no fault of my own, no tickets, no accidents. So it'll be interesting to see in 2 weeks, and I'll kind of report back to you on what the landscape is like out there. It's a little different for me too, because, I'm not driving like a brand new car. I'm driving like a 20-year-old vehicle, but still it has increased significantly since I got this older vehicle. Insurance, just trying to make ends meet, and all those things pile up when you're talking about affordability.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I told you my auto insurance went up substantially, and it is 100%.
Well, that's because you have a Hummer.
My fault. It is 100% my fault, and I will take full responsibility. I had a tough year, Real Talkers. I've shared this with you before. Bit of a heavy foot, and it is 100% my fault. But I'm not worried about me.
Yeah.
I'm worried about the people that are paying rates, like you said, in situations, people on fixed income, young people.
Another $60 a month is still X amount a year, and
Sexism and ageism is not permissible, I guess, except for when it's auto insurance. And nobody seems to push back when we all acknowledge that 16-year-old, I want to say boys, 16-year-old young men are charged astronomically high auto insurance rates. And somebody's going to write in and say, well, that's because, per capita or statistically, probably 16 to 21-year-old young men are the most likely to get into car accidents or to make insurance claims or be held responsible in collisions. But I just find it, to be honest, like it's one of those situations, and I guess insurance is a game for sure. It's odds, really, is what it is. Risk management, really. But you look at this, and it's one of those situations where, as a consumer, you're guilty until proven innocent, right? Yeah. If you're 16 years old, especially as a young man, you essentially have to be like 5, 6, 7 years ticket and accident free to be then treated like everybody else. And I've always just thought that that's bonkers. Shirley in our live chat powered by Park Power says the Premier takes no responsibility for her actions. Christy says, so hang on, the government botched that ministerial order on library books, but it's the board's problem for rolling it out. I think what the Edmonton Public School Board did was a little bit cheeky, and I think that what they did was very effective because when that ministerial order was implemented, they made a big deal about pulling 200 books off the shelves in these libraries. And what does that do? That makes the government look terrible. Supriya Dwivedi used the word dystopian in a recent episode of the show. By the way, Supriya will be back with us on Monday, and every Monday. We're excited to welcome her back into our regular rotation. But I was curious to see how the Premier would respond when asked if she thinks that that's this situation, the international attention around it, damaged Alberta's reputation. And she says maybe. I would say definitely. Now, it's probably not the type of thing that means big global companies are pulling their headquarters out of Calgary and that there's going to be tens of billions of dollars of capital fleeing the province. But I bet it does factor in situations where people are in other parts of Canada, for example, young families paying attention to the Alberta's Calling campaign. They're looking at relatively affordable housing in Alberta, relatively attainable home ownership, considering bringing their careers here. Perhaps young people in high school or university considering entering education as a profession. So when you talk about talent recruitment and when you talk about talent retention, that's where I can see a lot of the damage having been done. And obviously, it goes without saying that that's a story that's made news, not just across the country, but around the world. That's not the type of attention you're looking for when you're the Premier.
Well, what the Premier was looking for was for the teachers and librarians to get to work. And man, did they get to work, Ryan, taking those books off the shelves. Right? But I think it was also, I kind of chuckled during this interview when you said, you asked the question about books, and she said, well, I hope they would just agree with us and say, yes, yes, Premier. And it's like that's a pipe dream, right? That teachers and the government agreeing exactly on, how to. I don't want to use we're all using the word ban books or gatekeep educational material from students. So I just thought that was funny how she thought it would be. Yeah, it's easy.
And I mean, every legislator would love that. Every political leader would love that in so many ways as every principal, every librarian would love it if the government went to that. Now, of course, consultation is not too tall of an order, I don't think. But I think that, they would love to be able to write the policy on this and have it left alone. You talk to anybody, any professional in their field, like an educated, experienced professional, whether you're an engineer or you're a dentist or you're a teacher or you work in highway construction, you definitely believe that you know more about what you do and how to do it well than politicians. And that's certainly the case here. You know, we hear from many different industries that face government regulation, and consultation is incredibly important to them because they're the ones doing the deal every single day.
Don't you think the teachers and educators, they should be involved in writing the policy, right? Like they should be sitting at the table. I mean, not writing it themselves, but like that would help. That would make me feel at ease.
I'll credit the education minister, Dimitrios Nicolaitis. He's done a number of interviews on this show about this. Laura Winton has been a strong voice in support of the Library Association of Alberta. She's the past president there. And there have been exchanges, including a debate between the two of them on this show. You can find it in our archives and check it out. We'll link to it in the show notes so you can go directly to it. And they get into that. They get into the consultation. They get into where the expertise lies and essentially who should be calling the shots here. But it's all politics, right? And so it is what it is. And when you jump into that end of the pool with something like this, this would qualify certainly as one of those culture war type issues. You're going to have people that absolutely support it, and you're going to have people that vociferously oppose it. And that is absolutely the case here. It has probably as well served as a distraction with this looming teacher strike up until the point that the teachers have served strike notice. And so now everybody has October 6th circled on their calendar, or at least everybody with kids. And I know a lot of parents are hoping that they can get that figured out before families have to start coming up with alternative plans, childcare plans through the week. We want to get to more of your comments on this into our live chat powered by Park Power. If you're just joining our live stream presented by California Closets, Alberta's premier, joining us exclusively in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West, responding to what the Prime Minister Mark Carney had to say. We'll play another clip of his appearance on our show. That was on the 10th of September, where he talked about that Grey Cup deadline. Carney does this thing, and I think that like he's doing it quite effectively, and it comes across very naturally. But have you noticed he's dropping in these Canadian references in a lot of the things he does?
Oh, yeah.
On election night, April 28th, he steps up to the podium to offer his victory speech to the Canadians that just put him in office. And what does he say? He says, we will, now he backtracked on it a little bit, or he clarified later on this, but he said, we will have free trade in Canada by what? By Canada Day. And then he talks about this list of major projects, and he says, we will have another announcement by
Grey
Cup. What did he talk about when we were asking him about his deal with Donald Trump? And again, you can watch that full interview, the exclusive with Mark Carney, on our YouTube channel, wherever you get your podcasts. It's the 10th of September, just a couple of days ago. What did he reference, or what metaphor did he use when talking about dealing with Trump? Connor McDavid's negotiations with the Oilers, right? He says, much like Connor McDavid, he says, we're not about to sign a substandard deal with the U.S. I mean, he's kind of dialed in on I'm expecting him to be quoting Gord Downey at some point soon.
I love the Canadian deadlines. It's great.
Yeah.
We will have this by Victoria Day.
Well,
we will have this by... Yeah, it's
exactly. Great. So he's doing a good job communicating with Canadians, and he's obviously doing...
The Premier.
Can I say?
Doing a great job with her.
Get someone like Danielle Smith, and that's not a personal comment. That's a comment on The Office. To get the Premier of Alberta
to 180.
Can I say, like, is it fair? I should have asked her this, but is it fair? Like, she's almost singing his praises. Like, she's certainly crediting him. That's for sure. Talking about how there is
it's all positive.
What was the official comment that she made? She said that there has been unprecedented common ground. That Albertans are, quote, finally being heard. In this interview with us, she talked about Wab Kinu's great leadership, the NDP Premier of Manitoba. Like, what the hell? What is going on?
I don't know.
But this is good.
It feels nice. With everything going on in the States, it feels like in Canada, we're trying to hold hands here. We're trying to get along. And, I mean, we said this about, the Prime Minister being in here. I don't think it's a facade when he says he wants to work with when he wants to cool the rhetoric.
He has to.
He wants to hold hands with everyone. He wants to give everyone as much as he can. He seems like he really wants to do that, honestly.
Yeah. We've got Chantel watching us live on Facebook this morning. What's up, Chantel? Says maybe the money for wages, for teacher wages, could cut into Alberta's subsidies to oil and gas companies and maybe let that come out of their profits instead. Shy Courage says, what's going on with 30 kids in one classroom? Matthew says, it's disgusting to say that teachers need to choose between a living wage and a good environment for them and their students, right? Dubious says, every school's going to get a quarter of a teacher to help everybody out. He says, this class is taught by Mr. Johnson's arm. Very well done, Dubious. I mean, it's an interesting position to be in because you got a lot of teachers. I think I was going to say nobody will argue. Some people would argue, but I will not argue with the fact that I think teachers deserve to be well compensated. That's one of those jobs. You and I were joking a few episodes back. You couldn't pay me enough to be a teacher, and I would be a terrible teacher. I think it's a very difficult job. I think that it's a calling. It's a career, but I think it's a calling. And I think that we need to make sure that our teachers are supported, like Matthew just said, that our classroom resources are where they need to be. I think that it's fair to make the argument that Alberta certainly is one of Canada's most prosperous provinces. You look at all the narrative around, and I'm not saying that as a pejorative, but you look at the narrative, even with the Alberta separatists, the Alberta sovereigntists, what do they say? They talk about how much better off Alberta would be without the rest of Canada, essentially like Alberta's flush. Interesting comment from the Premier right here on Real Talk in this episode, by the way, noting that the price of oil, it's not a Nostradamus type observation. I know that there's a lot of people, of course, are going to be looking at a situation like that and going, well, yeah, I mean, Alberta's budget has long been way too dependent on the price of oil, talking about diversifying, another subject for another day, another series of episodes. But when you look at the budget constraints that the province has right now, looking at a deficit position, and then you also look at the position the teachers are in, expecting to be well compensated, and then you add in some of the other high-profile negotiations that are either being conducted across the province right now or that have been settled, like Alberta's nurses get a deal. It's a pretty good deal. To use the hockey metaphor, Leon Draisaitl's extension with the Oilers was interesting because then it kind of set the mark for where people would speculate Connor's extension would be. Yeah. Kirill Kaprizov, like you said, in Minnesota, turning down reportedly 8 years times $16 million a year. Everybody's going, well, gosh, Connor's not going to sign till Kaprizov signs because he wants to be the highest bid, right? We're going in on that. You have to look at where the market's at. You have to look at what other people are making. And Alberta's teachers, obviously, like Premier says here, she goes, well, that's going to be up to the leadership. Of course, that's a negotiating tactic. She's putting it back on the leadership at the ATA and the teachers union. But they are going to have to get to a point where you gotta ask, like at the end of the day, what's most important to us and what are we willing to sacrifice? What are we not?
And I think the nurses were satisfied but not happy. Like I have a friend.
No one's going to be thrilled.
No, I have a friend who's a nurse, and I was like, the Premier's on tomorrow, and she used some derogatory language right after that text. But it's again, it's Draisaitl's contract. He got a good deal, but is it going to be a good deal in year 6, 7, and 8 of his contract? No, because that cap's going up. So all these metaphors with the hockey here we're using back and forth for like the last 3 days.
There's a reason people use metaphors because they work. Although someone will write in, someone smarter than both of us, and they'll poke holes all over our metaphor. Yeah. Jason says in our live chat, powered by Park Power, he says, I can't imagine funding a police force we don't need while we at the same time don't place value on Alberta's school kids who aren't lucky enough to attend a charter school. It is certainly, Jim says Ryan missed the opportunity to ask why Alberta is the province with the lowest per student funding. Yeah, we've talked about that with the Premier before. We've talked about that with the Education Minister before. It is a fact, Jim. You're not wrong. As a matter of fact, I was just about to say it when I read your comment. I'm happy to have you make that comment because it's true. Alberta spends the least per student when it comes to education funding of any province or territory in Canada. That's a fact. And so, again, when it comes back to the narrative, like I say about Alberta separatists, they certainly don't speak for everybody, but what's the premise there? That Alberta's flush, Alberta's wealthy, Alberta would be even wealthier without having to support or prop up or participate in the equalization formula for the rest of Canada, right? I will remind everybody that equalization is simply everybody paying their income taxes and then have-not provinces receiving a top-up from the feds. Nobody in Alberta earning a paycheck is sending money to Quebec, but I digress. So if Alberta is so flush, to follow along those lines, and I'm not cracking on Alberta. I love Alberta. There's a reason why we live and work in Alberta. We could be anywhere in Canada or anywhere we want. I love Alberta, and I'm proud to be here. But if we are so flush, and if that is true, then why aren't we investing more in our schools?
100%.
Why are teachers like Jillian, who wrote into the show a while ago and emailed us, looking at, in Jillian's case, 37 students in her classroom?
Yeah.
That's bonkers.
I think the three things that bother me the most about this province, and believe me, I absolutely adore this place. I've left and come back several times. I could cross the border and go live in the States. I choose to live in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. I love it here. Is number one, what you just brought up. We don't spend enough on per student funding. And number two is, and we've had them on the show as well, like people with disabilities, we're ranked like lowest in the whole country as well, giving people access with that. And then number three, mental health initiatives too, were low too. Those three right there, it bothers me. I feel like those three chunks of people are they're overlooked in this province right now.
Absolutely. I want to get to more of your comments, including some of the tone in our live chat. One of you is calling out your live chat colleagues right now for some of the things that are being said about Danielle Smith, saying that there's essentially similarities to what some people are saying, criticizing Alberta's premier here. But maybe some of those same voices didn't like similar comments about the Liberal Prime Minister when he was in here a couple of days ago, right? Isn't that interesting? More people are paying attention. I'm not trying to be cute here at all. More people are paying attention to the tone of these types of conversations following this shooting incident that claimed the life, the murder of Charlie Kirk in Utah. And we'll have more on that. You're going to hear from American President Donald Trump, and you're going to hear from Bernie Sanders in this episode of the show as well. You can always send us an email. We want to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment on our YouTube episode. Hit us up on Spotify. You can leave comments there. You can find us on social media everywhere. And, of course, to talk at RyanJesperson.com.
Edmonton is here because the river is here. So we care for it, protect it, share it. The water of the North Saskatchewan sustains all of us. It's a big job to treat and deliver it, river to tap, to over 1 million people. So you can have and enjoy a glass of the Sask. On tap, made local by Epcor.
That's made local by Epcor. You probably noticed I have a glass of the Sask on my interview table every single day here, John, and we're really proud to partner with Epcor. They're doing incredible things. And I think that a lot of people, you can visit their website if you want to learn more about what they're doing when it comes to drinking water and the like. But that Glass of the Sask campaign has been really good. Yeah, I also want to make sure that, what did you want to say?
I just wanted to say it was off camera, but our Prime Minister enjoyed a nice glass of the Sask.
He did. It was the very first thing he did. We were sure to send that clip to our friends at Epcor, by the way. We also want to make sure that Athabasca University is on your radar, Real Talkers. You can find them online at athabascau.ca. At the time of year when a lot of people have sort of back to school on the mind, there's no better time for you to take that degree or master's program than right now. Go to athabascau.ca for more information and join learners across Canada. If you have been thinking about going back to school, Athabasca University is Canada's open university, serving students coast to coast with 35 different online master's and doctorate programs. The only commute is to your device. That's because AU is designed to fit your life. For ambitious people across Canada and beyond, AU offers flexible approaches to higher education. You can learn more about the AU Advantage by visiting athabascau.ca today. Hey, it's a big evening. Coming up, we're talking to you on the 12th of September for our friends at the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce as they present the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce mayoral debate. You can check out their website, edmontonchamber.com, for more on that. Just check out the events link. I do believe, John, that it's sold out, and I'm looking forward to that packed house. Just check out the Our Mayoral Debate link, again, at edmontonchamber.com. You know, the Chamber is pushing for change provincially, municipally, and of course federally as well. As home to more than 38,000 businesses, Edmonton contributes over $110 billion to Canada's GDP. The city's entrepreneurs are building the future, and the Chamber is driving that advocacy. If you run a business in Edmonton, and if you're looking to grow a business in Edmonton, make sure you check out their website. You can include their federal action plan in that on the website. Learn how Chamber membership can put Edmonton's entire business community behind you. Our friends at Friesen Brothers ready to welcome you with open arms at one of their 16 different Alberta locations this weekend, and that includes their Filipino Feast. This is a tradition, an annual tradition at Friesen Brothers, September 13th and 14th from 4 to 8 p.m. At all Friesen Brothers, the kitchen locations. We love these ones. You can, of course, from 4 to 8 p.m. on the 13th and 14th of September at Friesen Brothers Fresh Markets or in High Prairie. Participate, enjoy that all-you-can-eat Filipino feast, including pork adobo and beef machado, a spread of authentic Filipino dishes with more favorites waiting to be discovered. We're talking about Edmonton, Glenora, Edmonton, Rabbit Hill, Stony Plain, Hinton Hill, High Prairie, Peace River, Fort Sask, and Drumheller, a 2-day celebration at just $25 per person, all you can eat. You can find the details at friesen.com. And our friends at California Closets of Canada reminding you that a design consultation with one of their skilled and visionary team members is always free. There's no risk to book a consultation online at californiaclosets.ca and learn more about their approach. Talk to them about the space that you're looking to transform, the storage solution that you're looking for, and talk about your budget. And that's when they go to work. California Closets can work with any space. They can work with your budget because they have different styles or levels of installation. All components can be mixed and matched. So the best way to get a specific quote is to request that free consultation. Everything they install is guaranteed for life. You can connect with their team today at californiaclosets.ca.
Shout out to our friend Quick Dick Madick, who's in the chat.
Oh, boy.
He just said, hey, he said, a glass of the Sask. Well, you know, if it's got the word Saskatchewan in it, it's going to be great.
Oh, Quick Dick. I got to let that guy know. He's one of our favorite guests. He's one of my favorite YouTube creators. If you don't already subscribe to his channel, do so. We got to get him back on the show, but I know better than to reach out to anybody in ag, let alone a frontline farmer, and ask them for an interview anywhere near harvest. You got to connect. You got to ask for Quick Dick and the others in February. You got to ask for them. Not that there's any downtime, because I'm sure there's lots that they're working on then, but that's when you put those requests in.
I imagine he's pretty happy this year, right? Harvest out here in the West has been pretty good with all the rain and, you know, not so much dryness as last summer. That's at least what I've been hearing from some of the I have one friend, I just watch her every day, and it's
on
like
her Instagram.
It's like my calming moment of the day, her just combining, just doing the canola, the seeding or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not a farmer, but she just puts up these magical reels with beautiful calming music in the back and just a combine rolling, and I'm like, you know what, I could do this job, I think. You just sit there, you go straight, you just put your feet up. No, I'm just kidding.
But then they're like, your
the hard work is off camera.
Yeah, your bull's busted through the fence, and they're in the neighbor's property, and you got to fix that fence. And then we're like, that's when you and I are Googling, like, quick fence fix, Kijiji.
She also posts, like, been out here 13 hours today, had breakfast 12 hours ago, exhausted kind of thing.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It is beautiful to see some of that stuff right now around harvest season.
I referenced Jillian's email to the show, by the way, 37 students in her class, and I didn't know that she was in her live chat right now, but here she is. Jillian's been on the show before, a junior high school teacher, originally from Montreal, now in Alberta. She's got interesting perspectives on a lot of things, including Alberta sovereignty, but she says she remembers when kindergarten grade 1 classes were maintained around 18 students. And Jillian's Jillian's, I'm sure she's a veteran teacher. I'm sure she's been teaching for a decade or so. I don't know exactly how old she is, but she's not talking about like the 1970s, right? She says she remembers when it was 18 approximately in kinder grade 1. She says now they're all at 30, which is wild, nearly double. She says she teaches in French immersion. She says, so I have it a little bit easier, but teachers in regular programs have at least half a dozen students who don't even speak English. and there's no EA in there to help the teacher out. So that's obviously very heavy lifting for the teachers. I also saw a question in there from Les wondering, when is Naheed Nenshi going to be on the show? As a matter of fact, Les, we just chatted with his team within the last 72 hours or so, maybe within, what's after 72? 96 would be, right?
Great math.
Thank you very much.
On the fly.
Earlier in my career, I vowed I would never do math live on any show because
not a
I'm
good
so
idea.
bad
Not
at
a good
it.
idea.
But I have been in touch. We have been in touch with Nenshi's team, and we are booking him on sometime probably in the next month or so. And it's, there's just been a lot going on, obviously, including leading up to that interview with Prime Minister Carney. So we had a lot of irons in the fire. I can let you know about some developments and some guests that we have coming up on the show before we get into more of your comments here, and a development in the assassination of Charlie Kirk, plus the Flamethrower coming up a little later on in this episode. But I'm looking forward to next week. Supriya will be back with us on Monday. On Tuesday, you're going to see a special episode, a special presentation of Real Talk. We talked to you a lot about how proud we are to be supporting UCAN Youth Services as our charity of choice this year. They're doing unbelievable work getting young adults, young people, 12 and up, as a matter of fact, out of harm's way and into a path of economic independence. You're going to hear from their team coming up on Tuesday the 16th. On the 17th, this is going to be a banger, man. And I don't know if you want to call this kind of the underdogs. I think that the label is fair. But Dr. Omar Mohammed, he's an Edmonton dental surgeon. He's like a, what do you call it? Like, I know that it's
orthopedic surgeon.
Well, pediatricians are doctors for kids. What do you call it? Is there like a pedia dentist? Like he's like done work for. He's like a kid's dentist and a dental surgeon. Very respected in his field. Anyway, long story short, he's running for mayor, and his campaign, mayor in Edmonton,
pediatric dentist.
Thank you. And his campaign has been incredible. He's got like these
pretty good
hip hop songs, and
yeah.
he's like a dynamic personality. He raps. He does all this stuff trying to get people's attention, trying to get on the radar. And obviously, I mean, he's going to be included in the chamber mayoral debate coming up on the 12th of September this evening, if you're listening to this the day we're doing it. So that'll be great. He's going to sit down with us on the 17th. And then Brian Thiessen, a Calgary mayoral candidate, who's also really fighting to get into the mix on polling and on the public's radar. So we're going to go Calgary and Edmonton, a tale of two cities on the 17th. Max Fawcett will talk to us about global energy demand and some of Mark Carney's concessions, the implications on environmental policy. That'll be coming up on the 18th. And then we also wanted to let you know, did we share or not what's coming up on the 24th of September? How excited we are about this.
Biff Naked?
Yeah,
of course.
We told the audience. Biff Naked's going to be joining us in studio on the 24th. We also have a couple of big interviews coming up, Real Talk Roundtables on the 3rd of October. That's a Friday. We're going to have the top 3 polling candidates for mayor of the city of Edmonton in studio for a Real Talk Roundtable. In other words, a debate. That's the 3rd of October. And on the 10th of October, we will do the same for the top 3 polling candidates. We may be able to accommodate 4 out of the city of Calgary. So we'll have you covered on the 3rd and 10th of October.
Things are getting really busy around here. And hockey season just about to break out.
How are you feeling about it?
I mean, how does every Canadian feel in October every year?
Excited,
absolutely
optimistic,
incredible.
Like it's our year.
And I'm not even worried about the Connor McDavid thing anymore. I told you last night as we were out for some, we talked about it. We had an extra show yesterday, and then we went out and had a beverage after. And I said, you know what? I don't even care if Connor just rides the whole year and doesn't sign. Who cares?
Yeah.
I'm over it. I don't want to think about it anymore. I want it at the back of my mind. But, it is distressing to a lot of my friends and family and Canadians online. Every day I see them waking up and no matter all this other crazy stuff going on in the world, this is the one thing their mind is preoccupied with every morning. They just keep refreshing their feed saying, has he signed? I don't care if he signs for 1 year now. I don't care if he signs for 2 weeks. Just sign something. Put your name on something. Please, Connor, please.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. I always have this debate after we have the high-profile interviews, Trudeau, Smith, Carney, of whether or not we read all the hate on the interviews, directed at the host in the show, because I find it entertaining and I love it, just from audience members. It was at Ambustion says, Danielle Smith knows how to work Jespo. Sorry, not sorry. People are talking about how soft we are on her. People were saying how soft we are on Mark Carney as well. And I would just say, it's kind of funny. Someone in our live chat said there were no follow-up questions. Well, there absolutely were follow-up questions. I asked her if she was surprised at how the library book ban blew up, and then I asked her if she thinks that Alberta's reputation took a hit. That's a follow-up question.
But Ryan,
yeah,
you didn't
we're trying
body
to cover
slam
around
her.
it. I'm not looking.
Live on
I didn't
TV.
body slam her. I didn't call her names. But these are very pointed and direct questions, friends. And so, I mean, the politicians, and I don't use this word as an insult, but the ones that are particularly skilled and a little bit slippery, oftentimes when you're trying to cover a lot of ground in an interview, you're not going to bring them to tears and have them admit that they should resign from office. That's not typically how those interviews are going to go. But we do welcome your feedback. We appreciate you holding our feet to the fire, and you can always send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. For what it's worth, I feel just fine about the Smith interview, and I feel just fine about the Carney interview.
Hey, we're having a good month. So
are there any other talk shows in Alberta that have had exclusive
sitting
one-on-ones with the Prime Minister and the Premier in the same week? I don't think so. I know that they're all going to steal our clips, but I don't think any of them have had them.
I saw someone actually using our clips in a very public forum.
Yes, I did,
just recently.
but we don't talk about that.
But what I would say is we're having a banger month, but the world is topsy-turvy. So what do you want to go to next?
Well,
we got Bernie, we've got Kirk.
I want to go to CNN.com, reporting that a suspect is in custody for Charlie Kirk's murder. It's a 22-year-old from Utah by the name of Tyler Robinson. And Utah's governor has named the suspect and has announced, "We got him." The president of the United States, Donald Trump, from the Oval Office just a short time ago, posted this.
Radicals on the right as well. We have radicals on the left. People are watching all of these videos and cheering. Some people are cheering that Charlie was killed. How do we fix this country? How do we come back together?
I'll tell you something that's going to get me in trouble, but I couldn't care less. The radicals on the right oftentimes are radical because they don't want to see crime. They don't want to see crime.
Worried about the border.
They're saying, we don't want these people coming in. We don't want you burning our shopping centers. We don't want you shooting our people in the middle of the street. The radicals on the left are the problem. And they're vicious, and they're horrible, and they're politically savvy. Although they want men and women sports, they want transgender for everyone, they want open borders. The worst thing that happened.
He goes on from there, Trump out of the Oval Office, sitting on the set of Fox and Friends, and kind of some interesting comments about the polarizing nature of this, of course, and this lands, I would imagine, closer to home for the president, of course, as he had a very close relationship with Charlie Kirk and owed much of his political success to Charlie Kirk, including winning that election. But the killer, FBI and the governor of Utah confirming that they do believe the suspect, let me say, and that's how we should properly and responsibly report it, the suspect in the killing of Charlie Kirk is in custody. Tyler Robinson, who reached out to a family friend, as confirmed by Utah Governor Spencer Cox, this family friend who contacted authorities, told police that Robinson, the accused, or at least the suspect, let me say, the suspect spoke negatively of Charlie Kirk before the shooting. There are reports reported by CNN that investigators discovered a bolt-action rifle wrapped in a towel and inscriptions, including one that read, "Hey, fascist, catch," engraved on casings that were found with the rifle, and the president earlier saying that he believed with a high degree of certainty that the shooting suspect had been apprehended. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a particularly remarkable statement that's making the rounds, and I wanted to make time to include that on this episode of the show, and that is from noted and longtime Democrat, you might even call him a lefty, Bernie Sanders. And I've seen this shared. It's about 4 minutes, which is way longer than any other clip that I think it's the longest clip we've ever played on the show. But I think that it's very important. If you're listening to this later and you've already heard it, feel free to skip ahead 4 minutes. But I think it's important that we listen to this. I've seen it shared by Republicans, I know, in the United States. I've seen it shared by Canadian conservatives and obviously by a lot of progressives as well, as this has been a tumultuous and troubling couple of days since this shooting, regardless, like I've said, of how you vote, regardless of what podcast you listen to, regardless of where you live, Bernie Sanders has something to say that I think we all need to pay attention to.
Thank you very much for joining me. I want to say a few words regarding the terrible murder yesterday of Charlie Kirk. someone who I strongly disagreed with on almost every issue, but who was clearly a very smart and effective communicator and organizer, and someone unafraid to get out into the world and engage the public. My condolences go out to his wife and his family. A free and democratic society, which is what America is supposed to be about, depends upon the basic premise that people can speak out, organize, and take part in public life without fear, without worrying that they might be killed, injured, or humiliated for expressing their political views. In fact, that is the essence of what freedom is about and what democracy is about. You have a point of view, that's great. I have a point of view that is different than yours, that's great. Let's argue it out. We make our case to the American people at the local, state, and federal levels, and we hold free elections in which the people decide what they want. That's called freedom and democracy. And I want as many people as possible to participate in that process without fear. Freedom and democracy is not about political violence. It is not about assassinating public officials. It is not about trying to intimidate people who speak out on an issue. Political violence, in fact, is political cowardice. It means that you cannot convince people of the correctness of your ideas, and you have to impose them through force. Every American, no matter what one's political point of view may be, must condemn all forms of political violence and all forms of intimidation. We must welcome and respect dissenting points of view. That's what our Constitution is about. That's what our Bill of Rights is about. That, in fact, is what freedom is about. The murder of Charlie Kirk is part of a disturbing rise in political violence that threatens to hollow out public life and make people afraid of participating. From the January 6, 2021 attack on the United States Capitol, to the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, to the attack on Paul Pelosi, to the attempted kidnapping of Michigan Governor Whitmer, to the murder of Minnesota's Speaker of the House, Melissa Hortman, and her husband, to the arson attack on Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, to the shooting of United Health Executive Brian Thompson, and the shooting several years ago of Representative Steve Scalise, this chilling rise in violence has targeted public officials across the political spectrum. Sadly, this is not a new phenomenon. We all remember the assassinations of President Kennedy, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Senator Robert F. Kennedy, John Lennon, Medgar Evers, and the attempted assassinations of President Ronald Reagan and Alabama Governor George Wallace. This is a difficult and contentious moment in American history. Democracy in our country and throughout the world is under attack. And there are a lot of reasons for that which need serious discussion. But bottom line, if we honestly believe in democracy, if we believe in freedom, all of us must be loud and clear. Political violence, regardless of ideology, is not the answer and must be condemned. Thank you.
I thought that was really good, you know? Mm-hmm. And at a time where, you know, that we've seen, I think that most people are appalled by the cold-blooded murder of someone, ostensibly based on their political commentary, or the positions that they've taken on contentious issues, or the weaponization of political capital, or whatever it is. I think most people have been appalled by that, but there has been celebration around Charlie Kirk's death. A lot of people saying, you know, that he did not show the same grace and empathy that folks are expecting to be shown toward his family right now, or even to him. And I thought that someone like Bernie Sanders is probably the voice of reason, the most powerful voice of reason in this circumstance. You don't see someone like Bernie Sanders. He's almost been, I won't say on an island, because he's obviously has like this incredible political career, and he's obviously, to be elected as many times as he had, and to be as prominent of a figure as he is, and to have been a former candidate, to seek the nomination of the Democratic nomination to be president. He's obviously operated at the highest level of politics for quite some time, and everybody knows who he is. But I think that more people than not, you think of that like Bernie meme of him like sitting with like the knit mitts on the chair.
My mother has it on her fridge.
Everybody knows what I'm talking about right now, because even if you don't agree with Bernie Sanders at all,
he's a common sense guy.
He's for the most part, he's a respected person. He can be a calm voice at a time where I think that tensions are very high, very high.
Huge.
You and I were talking about this yesterday, wondering. Here's some insight behind the curtain, behind the scenes. I did not ask Premier Smith today about her own personal sense of security, her own personal security detail. That's kind of a thing in the business that politicians, celebrities, known people, as we call them, do not discuss their security, do not discuss their protection detail. But I'd be curious to know politicians around North America or even around the world, the chill that this may have put through them over the past couple of days, let alone other political commentators and the like. Yeah. So I think to have someone like Bernie Sanders come forward, I might be stating something obvious here, but someone who I guarantee would disagree with Charlie Kirk on almost everything, right? To come out and insist that this is about protecting democracy, this is about protecting civil society, that there is a higher calling in a situation like this for people to try to lower the temperature and to bring civility back. I just think that it's a really important address that he delivered there.
And I'm not afraid to say this. I think Bernie Sanders would have been an excellent U.S. president. I think he would have pleased a lot of people and surprised a lot of people too, who may have not had supported him at the time. And I love how, like, he's saying everything I want to say, but so much more eloquently, and just how we need to tone all of this down. All we've heard for like 24 hours, Ryan, is, the left saying, oh, it's probably a crazy white person, a Republican, and the right saying, oh, it's a lunatic, it's a trans person, it's a black person,
yes,
it's an illegal immigrant, and now we find out who it is. It's a kid, man. It's a 22-year-old kid who most likely, let's be honest, has mental issues. I mean, he's not black.
Well, we don't know.
Well, here's some things we've learned. This happened this morning, but, he's not black. He's not trans. He's not Muslim. He's not Hispanic. He's from Utah. His father is a retired sheriff.
Yeah.
That means had firearms in the home. We're seeing pictures of him with his family and firearms. It looks like he's a Mormon. There's pictures of him wearing a Trump costume for Halloween a couple of years ago. So
voter registration records show he had no party affiliation, didn't vote in the two most recent elections. I'm referencing CNN on this. Grew up in Washington, Utah, the city of Washington, Utah. Earned a scholarship to attend Utah State University. I mean, it's just it's shocking. I also want to touch on this. We should mention this. And it's an important comment from Gilles in our live chat. Gilles says, what I struggle with, says Gilles, what he struggles with, is that there's such outrage about a podcaster, says Gilles, but nothing about the school children that were killed on the same day in Colorado. He says, why is one life worth so much more than another? Gilles, I certainly take your point. And obviously, there has been coverage. Like right now, I'm looking at Emma Tucker's reporting. I'm just clicking around on CNN. Geez, the American news cycle right now. Denver area high school shooting suspect was radicalized, say officials. And I hate to say this. I hate to even say this out loud. Because Gilles absolutely right. One life is not worth so much more than another. But the killing or the extinguishing of one life of a very prominent and influential person will overshadow, unfortunately, based on the public's attention, how the news cycle works and the like. And I mean, no disrespect to any victim of any shooting anywhere. But when, an influential individual, the youngest person ever to speak at the Republican National Convention, the person that rallied enough youth support to help Donald Trump win a second term in the Oval Office, is shot in front of thousands of people, and thus, and I guarantee it won't stop Charlie Kirk's organization or stop that movement. If anything, I think it will galvanize that movement and his supporters. But for obvious reasons, that's a story that's going to make news every day. And unfortunately and tragically, with mass shootings in the United States, by definition, there's a mass shooting every day in the United States. It's horrible. Mm-hmm. It's unacceptable. We've talked about gun violence on the show. We've talked about gun culture on the show. We've talked about, can you change the trend that we've seen in the United States? Even Charlie Kirk himself talked about the Second Amendment and how gun deaths were an unfortunate, basically, and I'm paraphrasing what he said, but he basically said they were an unfortunate reality when it comes to protecting the Second Amendment. Mm-hmm. But there's a whole different thing in the United States. If there's heaven forbid, if there's a mass shooting in Canada, if there's a school shooting in Canada, I think of Tabor, Alberta, one that comes right to the top of my head many years ago. That's something that would make news for a week. Mm-hmm. Whereas in the United States, unfortunately, as Gilles references, it almost doesn't even register with the public, which I've really never been able to wrap my mind around.
Yeah. It's scary times right now. It
is.
Garth in the chat is saying I should stick to the facts unless I know he has mental health issues for sure. I am simply alluding to the fact that I would argue that most people who murder, especially in public like that, have some sort of mental health issue, even if it was temporary and happened, while they were doing it, the anger that caused them to do it. I just mean it takes a lot for someone to do what they did.
I think another way to phrase it is it's hardly controversial to suggest that this person was radicalized. If someone gets to the point of plotting out an assassination, plotting out and carrying out
in public
an assassination, they've been radicalized. I think that's a safe statement for sure. We welcome your comments to talk at ryanjesperson.com. Obviously, this is something that we'll continue to talk about when it comes to the political climate, when it comes to developments here, when it comes to charges being laid and the like, and we'll have you covered here on Real Talk. Of course, we'll be reaching stateside as well for voices from the United States to further comment on this. We want to get to your feedback from our week here on the show, and in particular, the Charlie Kirk murder, with an episode of the Flamethrower coming up in just a moment. But I did want to let you know again how grateful we are for those of you Real Talkers that let us know that you were able to stop by the UCAN Youth Services open house earlier this week. We're so proud of our friends at UCAN. As mentioned, you're going to see them featured in a special edition of the Real Talk Roundtable coming up next Tuesday. That's going to be the 17th of September. The 16th of September is the Tuesday. You'll see them here. UCAN Youth Services is doing remarkable, literally life-changing work, helping young people basically turn around from the path that they're on, spending a lot of time in the back of cop cars or dealing with, basically no shelter, food insecurity, some of the basically life or death kind of things. And then UCAN's getting them into education programs that work for them and then plugged into employment opportunities. It's really, really remarkable. You can learn more about the work that UCAN is doing. If you know a young person between the ages of 18 and 24 who just needs somebody to believe in them, they have a ton of potential to enter the workforce. They just need some direction. Do not hesitate to reach out to the team at UCAN today. You can find them on their website, ucan.ca. A shout out to our friends at Solar by Kubi. I had a chance to chat with their leadership earlier this week. They told us they have just enjoyed their busiest summer in their 10-year history, and I think that probably has a big lot to do with the fact that it's never been really, quite frankly, more accessible. It's never been more affordable to get solar up on your rooftops. They've got the Canada Greener Homes Loan, which means that you don't have to come up with all that funding up front, which is a really big deal for people that have to find a way to afford those energy bills, right? You're going, what am I going to do? Am I going to spend, 18 grand on new solar panels? You can get 10 years to pay it off, and with most new solar systems, over 10 years, your system's already paid for itself anyway. The team at Kubi can explain it even better, and they can give you a free quote today when you swing by their website. That's kubi.ca, Kuby.ca. When it comes to money talks or what's on your mind, if you're thinking ahead toward wealth and retirement planning, the team at North Road Investment Council would love to open up a conversation with you. They work with successful families and organizations, oftentimes in detail-driven professions, engineers and physicians and architects. as a steady hand and a studied voice to guide you through wealth and investing. North Road Investment Council offers something that nobody else in the wealth management space offers, and that is digital risk advisory services. They have a full-time team member that works on just this, ensuring that their clients are best protected, making better and safer choices in their digitally connected life. You can actually take a digital risk quiz to find out if you may be susceptible to those digital risks. Just swing on by their website to get in touch. That's northroadic.com. And John, we're so proud to be partnering with Play Alberta every Thursday here on the show. A story how Alberta wins. I couldn't help myself from getting into the Labor Day Classic rematch where the Elks topped the Stamps after the Stamps topped the Elks in the Labor Day Classic. The Battle of Alberta is back in the CFL. That was Alberta wins this week. And I want to talk to you about how Alberta's winning with Play Alberta. Not only is it the most safe and secure way to bet casino, sports, and lottery online, and not only does all of the revenue go right back to the province, but Albertans are winning big every single day. 10, 50, even as much as $100,000 is won daily on Play Alberta. They've even made millionaires. And best of all, for a limited time only, new players can receive a $1,000 casino bonus. You can download the Play Alberta app anywhere you get your apps. Check out their great offers and get started today. You can also send us, by the way, your stories of how Alberta wins to talk@ryanjesperson.com. I want to think of like if a young kid's lemonade stand raises like $1,500 for the stollery, or if a young Alberta student wins a spelling bee, or if a business accomplishes something remarkable or becomes the first in its field to innovate in a particular area. Let us know those stories. We're going to feature them every single Thursday, presented by Play Alberta. It's a promotion I'm really excited about because we get to share our love for our home province at least once a week. Pretty cool. Also wanted to reference an email from Neil, who is in touch with the show. He said, hey, Jespo, I would absolutely love, and we're always happy to do this, Neil. He says, if you could mention the Terry Fox run, it's happening on Sunday. This is going to be on the 14th of September in various different communities in and around Edmonton. He says you can still sign up. You can make a donation as well. He says this is the 45th anniversary of that run, Johnny. 45 years, the Terry Fox run. He says they've raised almost $1 billion in the past 45 years, if you can believe it. If you want to make a donation or if you'd like to register to run, that's coming up on the 14th. You can check out run.terryfox.ca. Run.terryfox.ca. Thanks to Neil for passing that along. I think about Terry Fox often. You know, and they've done a great job. His family has, and the foundation in those 45 years of continuing that legacy, raising $1 billion, which is really remarkable, or at least close to $1 billion, fundraising for cancer research. But do you think, I mean, he was a high achiever. He died at obviously tragically a very young age, but was a renowned athlete out on the West Coast and a university student when he was diagnosed. But to make that decision to run across Canada and to raise funds and to do that for a young man in his early 20s, really a remarkable move. But can you imagine had he been able to find out, or if there had been some way for him to know the legacy that he would leave posthumously? You know what I mean? Isn't that absolutely wild? Did you ever participate in the Terry Fox run?
No, I didn't actually.
Yeah, our school would do it when I went to high school. It seemed like they quit doing it for some reason, and I know that's why a lot of communities really prioritize putting that Terry Fox run together to make sure that if it's not happening at the schools, that people can participate. So shout out to Neil and all of the Real Talkers that are participating in the Terry Fox run this weekend. And of course, you got to let us know how it goes. Send photos, and we'll be happy to feature you on the show. How about this? I love this from Lorraine. Says Terry Fox is one of the only true heroes of our time.
I like it.
I like that. That's very well said. Les, finally some good news. He says the Terry Fox run. There's been some good news, but it has been a challenging week, and there's been a lot going on. And I'll take your point. If it helps anybody feel any better, we're about to embark on a cathartic exercise here. This happens once a week on the show, courtesy of our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. These are the hottest takes that we've received with our YouTube comments and emails to talk@ryanjesperson.com. It's the Flamethrower, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. Jake writes into the show and says, Jespo and Johnny, Earmuffs kids. I feel sick to my stomach thinking about this fucked up world that we're living in right now. Says I watched the video of Charlie Kirk's death. I don't even know who he was before I saw it yesterday. It was gruesome and it didn't even seem real. He says, what's happening to humanity? I feel so conflicted as I think about the situation. Jake says, this act of violence, though, I know is not the answer. Says, yes, people have a right to their political beliefs. And yes, of course, they have a right to speak them. But is hate speech against minorities a political belief? Is hating trans people a political belief? Is being racist a political belief? Do we need to protect those beliefs in our society? Jake says, I struggle with this one a lot, and I worry about the future. I can't explain the feeling that I get hearing some of his last words moments before seeing him fatally shot when he responded to a question from the audience about how many mass shooters in the last 10 years were transgender. And his answer was, too many. This was met with a chorus of cheers, and 1 second later, I watched him die. Jake says, I can't find the words to explain how this makes me feel as a trans man. I just know that I'm scared. Jake says, I don't think that this guy deserved to die. I'm terrified that he is now, though, a martyr for that cause. And Jake says, and I also don't understand why stomping on the rights of minorities is a political position. Can somebody please explain that to me? I hope that we all wake up soon and find out that this has all just been a bad nightmare. That from Jake. Jake, I'm grateful you shared. How about this one from Tranquil Vibration, who says, Jespo, I listened to your coverage, you and Johnny talking about Charlie Kirk's murder, and I was floored, not just by the murder itself, but by the reaction that I was witnessing. Some progressives trying to cloak it in rhetoric, saying that Charlie Kirk monetized division or owned the libs, inflaming the culture, as if those words explained or justified why a man would be gunned down. And others aren't even bothering hide it. Some are coming out to say that they're celebrating his death, celebrating a man being murdered in front of his wife and young family. That is the rot that we are staring at, says Tranquil Vibration. And let's not pretend that this is new. These are the same people, the same mindset that cheered when Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. The same ones who smirked when Malcolm X was brutally murdered. Men who were killed simply for daring to speak, for daring to challenge a system that sees them as less than human, for daring to believe something different, who were cut down by people who thought that they had godlike power to silence them forever. This is the historical echo that we're hearing right now. The progressives today are showing us the same sickness. Some dress it up saying, well, he stirred the pot or he asked for it. Others throw the mask off entirely and cheer like this is some sort of sport. Either way, this is the same poison that cheered when leaders of the past were cut down. And here's the truth, says Tranquil Vibration. Nothing Charlie Kirk ever said, no argument he ever made, no dollar he ever earned comes even close to justifying this. The moment you excuse it, or worse, celebrate it, you've stepped outside the bounds of morality altogether. You're telling the world exactly what you are. Not principled, not progressive, just a cheerleader for violence. That from Tranquil Vibration. This one from Cam, who says, Jespo, Johnny, it's been a while since I've emailed the show, but your pod continues to be my go-to for current events, education, and thoughtful discussion. Thanks, Cam. Says, reflecting on your show, I was struck by the timing of the Charlie Kirk discussion. 24 years after 9/11, and amidst all the division that we see in the world, it's so easy to get overwhelmed by the negatives, by the violent images that are constantly shared on X and other social media, like Johnny was talking about, where the most extreme views from all sides seem to dominate. Cam says, this makes me feel that now, more than ever, we need to discuss or focus our attention and gratitude on local communities, literally on our own backyard. Says, I listen to Real Talk because your conversations help me reflect on what's happening around me. The show's a great example of how people from different backgrounds can discuss difficult topics, learn from each other, and for the most part, treat each other with respect and without judgment. Now, while the world can feel like a negative place, says Cam, I feel like we can all have a positive impact on our communities, and it doesn't have to be huge gestures. Simple smiles, asking your neighbor how their day's going, or calling a close friend to let them know how you're thinking of them. That can bring more light to a darkening world. Cam says, I'm challenging my fellow Real Talkers, or as I like to think about it, the Real Talk family, love that, Cam, to do something positive in their community this week. Maybe volunteer at a food bank, help someone carry their groceries, or just smile and say hi to a random person on the street. And if you feel the urge to lash out, says Cam, let's fight back against what the internet has taught us. Instead of an immediate reaction, pause and reflect. Hopefully your response will be more positive than your initial thoughts. That from Cam. I really appreciated that one. KP says, Jespo, I am disgusted at the reaction of the left on the slaying of Charlie Kirk. Seeing someone who engaged the opposite side to talk, that it didn't matter that it was college kids or the governor of the largest state of America or an event or just on the street, Kirk would talk to you. He'd try to understand you. His opinion, he'd share it, his effect on people after being killed. What a dark day in this world. But what made this a radicalizing event, says KP, is seeing all the progressives dance for joy as the residual flow in the bypass machine was still warm. What a way to put it. He says, I'll be honest, it makes me look at the left differently. Before I thought they were just emotional, intolerant narcissists, but now I think they're monsters. We shouldn't make it okay to shoot people you don't agree with if they have power, because then nobody will want to speak. And as Charlie Kirk himself said, when people stop talking, that's when you get violence, because you start to think the other side is so evil, and eventually they lose their humanity. KP says thanks, and may he rest in peace forever with God's grace. Amen. Also wanted to get to this one from Darren. And Darren, we thank you for this comment. He says, I listened to your show after Charlie Kirk's killing. Boy, are we ever in crazy times. One thing that really stuck with me as I listened to Real Talk was how the right might retaliate, and for good reason. Darren says Charlie Kirk was arguably the most influential conservative for people under 30, maybe in the history of American politics, or at least, says Darren, in my almost 50 years. Says his life was taken for simply having a different opinion. And yet, as some of the deranged far left is celebrating on the streets and social media, almost to poke the bear, he says it seems, there are to this point no reports of riots, electric cars on fire, or cities burning to the ground. There are only peaceful gatherings and candlelight vigils. Darren says if the roles were reversed, history tells us this likely wouldn't be so calm. And the fact that this isn't being acknowledged by mainstream media implores me to have you read my Flamethrower. That from Darren. Thanks for taking the time to send it in, Darren. You can submit your flamethrowers to Real Talk by leaving a comment on one of our YouTube episodes, or you can send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. The Flamethrower wraps us up every week, courtesy of our friends at the DQs in Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road. When you're in there for a flamethrower, Johnny, and a score blizzard, you make sure you let them know that Real Talk sent you. I'll see you at the Edmonton Chambers mayoral debate tonight, maybe. Maybe I'll see you at Morgan Wallen later, and I'll definitely see you on Monday when we welcome Supriya Dwivedi back to the show. Make it a great weekend, friends. One love.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harman Kandola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.